Welcome back, my dear students. Today, let us learn a mysterious story, A Face in the Dark, written by Ruskin Bond. The storyline, plot summary. The story, A Face in the Dark by Ruskin Bond, is set in Shimla, a town in Himachal Pradesh, India, where an Anglo-Indian teacher, Mr. Oliver, main character of the story, teaches in a reputed English public school which is regarded as the Atone of the East. He is a bachelor and goes to the market some 3 miles away in the evening and returns back to school at night on a daily basis. He takes the shortcut way through the pine forest. Fine. The story plot is like this, that a teacher is there whose name is Mr. Oliver. Okay, he is an Anglo-Indian teacher. He daily goes to Shimla bazaars to eat some food and also sometimes to watch movies. Evenings after school he goes to that bazaars and night he comes back. While coming back, he takes the shortcut route through Shimla jungles. Okay. What is Atone of East? Let me explain you in the lesson. See, Ruskin Bond. Okay. A great writer. An Indian author of British descent, a prolific writer whose works are popular with adults and children alike. Means he writes suspense stories and thrilling stories. And also, he likes to picturize the stories somewhere in hill stations and all. As he is from hill station, he is still alive, 85 years old. Okay. Now, let us see what is there in the story, A Face in the Dark. As you can see, a watchman catching lantern. This image is connected with the climax of the story. Fine, children. Here, characters, theme and setting. Characters, Mr. Oliver, a watchman, a faceless boy. Theme, the paranormal side of existence. What is paranormal side of existence? Believing in the existence of supernatural powers or evil powers. Scope of darkness in human experience. Children, darkness is the most horrible thing a child or a man or a woman can ever imagine. If there is no one with us in dark, it is the most horrible time to spend. Now, fear of the unknown. Yeah, this is another fear of unknown when we are alone. Even a shadow creates an horrible experience in life. Setting, a pine forest, Shimla. Yeah, the setting is done in a pine forest, Shimla. Plot line, now itself I said same points are mentioned here. Now, Mr. Oliver, an Anglo-Indian teacher, was returning to his school late one night on the outskirts of the hill station of Shimla. From before Kipling's time, the school had been run on English public school lines, and the boys, most of them from wealthy Indian families, wore blazers, caps and ties. Life magazine, in a feature on India, had once called it the Atone of the East. Mr. Oliver had been teaching in the school for several years. Fine. What is this paragraph about? Means this is introduction. Fine, children. Mr. Oliver is one Anglo-Indian teacher. He was returning late night that day, means that evening, and he was crossing the outskirts of the hill and he wanted to take the shortcut which passes through pine forest in Shimla. Okay. This school was conducted, means it was run by English public school lines. Means English public school lines are the famous schools in England. This is one branch of that which is managed by them, and so this had the international standards in the residential schools in Shimla. Okay, this school was very famous. Here many Indian families, rich boys from the age 13 to 18 studied here. It was called Atone of the East. What is the meaning of Atone of the East? See, Atone is one college which is located in England. This is the largest and most elite public schools. Means this is the most elegant boarding schools for boys from the age 13 to 18. Means in India, Atone of East means this was for boys from 13 to 18, and that too international level school located in Shimla. And students wore blazers, caps and ties. You can understand the standard. Life magazine. This is another important word to remember. What is the meaning of Life magazine? Life magazine is also a famous magazine in which Our a town of east means it was mentioned as a town of east was mentioned about the Shimla school. This magazine was circulated on weekly basis. Okay, and this weekly basis magazine had mentioned about this school. Fine, children. So this school was quite very famous, and in this school this teacher was working, and this teacher was quite very courageous fellow who never believed in any imagination. That day he was returning from Shimla bazaars, right? And it was quite very dark. He took shortcut. When there was a strong wind, the pine trees made sad, airy sounds that kept most people to the main road. See, when wind blew, what happened there? The pine trees were creating one airy means fearful, or a kind of horrible sound was coming from that trees. This kept people away from jungle, especially they were going from main road. Nobody was daring to enter the jungle after evening. But Mr. Oliver was not a nervous or imaginative man. He carried a torch, and on the night, right of its pale gleam, the batteries were running down. Moved fitfully over the narrow forest path when its flickering light fell on the figure of a boy who was sitting alone on a rock. Mr. Oliver stopped. Boys were not supposed to be out of the school after 7 p.m. and it was now well past 9. Means children were not allowed to come out of school after evening, and also it was already late. Around 9 o'clock he cannot come out of school. But when teacher saw a child sitting there, that too, that time his battery was going down, means his torch was flickering. Okay. When its flickering light fell on the figure of a body who was sitting alone on rock, Mr. Oliver stopped. See, being a teacher, it is his duty to ask if he finds a child on anywhere somewhere out of school, that too from residential school. Boys were not supposed to come out by means evening time. He asked, "What are you doing here?" "Boy," asked Mr. Oliver sharply, moving closer to the child, recognize the miscreant. To recognize the miscreant. See, Mr. Oliver asked very sharply, "Teacher, right? Why are you out of school, boy? That too at this time." Miscreant means who does wrong. And this boy made a mistake coming out of his school out of time. Correct? So this boy is a miscreant who broke the rule of school and came out of school. Now, but even as he approached the boy, Mr. Oliver sensed that something was wrong. The boy appeared to be crying. His head hung down. He held his face in his hand and his body shook convulsively. It was a strange, soundless weeping, and Mr. Oliver felt distinctly uneasy. "Well, what's the matter?" he asked, his anger giving way to concern. "What are you crying for?" The boy would not answer or look up. His body continued to be racked with silent sobbing. "Oh, come on, boy. You shouldn't be out here at this hour. Tell me the trouble. Look up." See, the teacher approached very near to the boy and asked, "What is the problem? Why is he here?" But his body was shaking very badly, and convulsively means shaking hardly. Okay, because of some shock. And he was sobbing, crying, okay, with painful tone. He tried to ask him, but this fellow closed his face with his hands and bent his head down. Teacher repeatedly asked, "What is the trouble? Please tell me. Look up." See, this fellow Oliver is catching his torch and trying to see. The boy lifted his head. Okay, see, this boy is covering his hand, and when he lifted his head, the face was like this. Fine. Now let us see what happens. The boy looked up. He took his hand from his face and looked up at his teacher. The light from Mr. Oliver's torch fell on the boy's face, if you could call it a face. See, the boy looked up when teacher forced. He took off his hand, and Mr. Oliver's torch fell from his hand. Why? Because Oliver was shocked. He could, if you could call it a face, it was not at all a face. He had no eyes, no ears, no mouth, no nose, or no mouth. Nothing he had on his face, no features only. It was very horrible. Just a meatball. It was just a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it. See, for that meatball, there was a school cap which attracted this teacher, right? And there was nothing. It was so horrible. Teacher was shocked and he left his torch there. And that's where the story should end. As indeed it has for several people who have had several experiences and dropped dead of inexplicable heart attacks. But for Mr. Oliver, it did not end here. See, many people came across this incident in jungle before. It was like rumors in and around that Shimla, but nobody believed this. But some people died there only because of heart attack. The torch, but for Oliver, it did not end. Oliver was courageous, right? Somehow he took courage and started running from there. The torch fell from his trembling hand. He turned and scrambled down the path. He ran like anything from there, running blindly through the trees and calling for help. He was shouting for help, running blindly through the trees and calling for help. He was still running towards the school buildings. See which side he was heading? Towards school buildings. When he saw a lantern swinging in the middle of the path, Mr. Oliver had never been before seen so pleased to see the night watchman. See, on the way when he was running like mad, he saw a watchman. Before this, he never came across any watchman. That too with a lantern. He stumbled up to the watchman, gasping for breath and speaking incoherently. See, he catch hold of that fellow and he was breathing with like it was audible. Okay, he was breathing very loudly and he asked for help and he spoke with that fellow. And that fellow, "What is it, Sahib?" asked the watchman. Watchman, "What happened, Sahib?" "Sir, what happened?" "Has there been an accident?" "Why are you running? Did you see any horrible accident, sir? Why are you running?" He questioned. Who questioned? Watchman questioned. "I saw something horrible. A boy weeping in the forest and he had no face." "No face, Sahib?" See, teacher said, "I saw a child, boy in the jungle. He had no face only." Then watchman said, "No face, Sahib?" Very horribly he questioned. "No eyes, no mouth, no nose, no mouth, nothing." Teacher answered, "Oliver, there was nothing. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, nothing." "Do you mean it was like this, Sahib?" See, he lifted his lantern to his face. "Oh, ho, ho. Then the child's face was like this, Sahib." Another devil was there. Okay, same like that boy. Asked the watchman, who had no face, no eyes, no mouth, nothing, and raised the lamp to his own face. The watchman had no eyes, no ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow. The wind blew the lamp out. Yes. Immediately, once the face was shown from the lantern, it was another devil who this Oliver came across. Second, right? Immediately, the lamp blew out and Mr. Oliver had his heart attack. That supernatural power killed this Oliver also, or he survived. It is a question for the readers. Somewhere it is mentioned that he was courageous, but still don't know, children. After encountering two supernatural powers, will a human being be alive in the dark jungle? Will he be able to face that situation? Many unanswered questions are left for us to guess and imagine by our writer, Ruskin Bond. Hope you understood this supernatural story where we learned how dark occupies a man's fear, how it sometimes makes us to believe the unbelievable incidents. Thank you.